Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Valkyria Verder. Today we are talking about Saturn and protection magic. Now this is a part of a larger course on protection, which is on YouTube and on the website Astrology and Magic. Before we get into the Saturn, magic, and protection, which what a heavy hitter, and also I'm filming this on a full moon in Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. I love Capricorn and Saturn energy, so I'm really excited to get into this. But some updates on stuff before we get into it. If you're someone who likes to have like the written times of transits and different things like that, I send those out in blog fashion and format, and I honestly, personally really love that space. It is either a free or a paid subscription, however you decide to support, and also just sign up and be in the space. Beautiful, and I'm grateful for any of the support that you do offer to me. That's true. And then also the website's finally done. The website is finally finished. It took so long for me to get it up and running. It was like up and running, perfect, pristine, and then pre-Saturn retrograde, like the shadow period of it came through and was like, hey, we're gonna take this whole thing down. So it's just been a whole work through to get that back up and running. But you know what? I learned a lot in the process. Chaos for reconstruction, that's kind of a theme right now if you're watching this around the time that I posted it, with Saturn retrograde and Neptune retrograde in Pisces. So books are back up. Norse Magic, book 1, the runes. Book of spells, hello. Poetry to Educate the Witch, book 1, that one's available. They're available ebooks on the website, or there's links to the Barnes & Noble, both paper cover and hardback, beautiful. And my NFT collection. Every single direction. I'm pretty sure that's every single thing that I offer at this current moment. With hopefully not the longest intro ever, let's talk about Saturn. If you are studying astrology and magic for protection, Saturn is the placement. It is the placement. If you're studying your chart to figure out how to protect yourself, Capricorn, Aquarius, Saturn. If there is anything that you study for protection, it needs to be Saturn, because Saturn is the placement that if you are not paying attention to it, it doesn't care. Saturn doesn't care if you feel like you're worth it. Saturn doesn't care. Saturn doesn't care. It doesn't care about how you feel. It just cares if you have done what you have needed to do. And if you have done what you have needed to do, usually protection is rewarded to you. But if you have not, then there are weaknesses. And sometimes that can happen a lot, because keeping up with the consistency and also dependent upon the other placements that are in your chart, people who are not Saturn heavy, people who are not like super Saturn ruled, being in that consistent Saturn energy all the time, first of all, can be pretty exhausting. And secondly, it costs a lot. That sort of protection, that sort of structural protection, to have a whole entire system, a whole entire armory to make sure that you are protected, a lot of work. There's a lot of payment, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of study, a lot of order, because that's really what Saturn is. Understanding your order. Saturn is the planet that rules over our structures that are inescapable. It's the stuff that we're not able to move out of. The way that we experience time, we have experienced linear time for generations and generations and generations and generations. Maybe one day we'll evolve out of that. Crazy wild. Haven't even thought about that really before this video. Maybe one day we will evolve out of that and we'll experience time differently. I suppose there is such a thing called time magic, all right? But we'll maybe cover that in another video. That's not necessarily right now for here. That's not technically like protection oriented, although really interesting. And also kind of a dangerous form of magic to practice, but not all the time. Anyways, moving on. It also rules over systems like gravity. Even when we're like way out in outer space, we still technically relate that zero gravity to the system of gravity. It also rules over our structures and our systems on the earth that have taken generations to build. Politics, and also include hierarchies. Politics, government structures, okay? If you're looking at like schooling structures, those two, educational systems, any sort of system, healthcare systems, any sort of system that has taken generations and generations and generations, so many of them, generations, to be structured and to be built. If we are putting in the work to change, and that's the thing, is like, whether you're putting in the work to change those systems in your lifetime or not, they're going to be going through the process of change. And so part of the reason that paying attention to Saturn, in my opinion, is so important is because whether you're doing it or not, it's going to happen. It's like something that you're forced to go through. You have to go through the Saturn hierarchies. You have to go through the Saturn lessons. Life sometimes is hard. Life sometimes does not give us the cards that we want. Sometimes we are not dealt the hand that we are asking for. And even when that happens, Saturn is like, show up and figure out how to make this hand last for as little time as possible so that you can move on and hopefully be awarded some better cards. Because Saturn, again, ruler of time. Where Saturn is in your chart, the house that it's in, that is the house where you are restricted. That's where your lessons are going to show up. And restriction is kind of the more common language that astrologers will use around this Saturn placement. But there's a couple of other words that I want to offer to you as well. It's not just about restriction. There's also, if you're able to keep up with the patterns of what Saturn is bringing through in that area of life, you can actually get pretty good at predicting what's going to happen next. If you've ever heard of the rule of thirds, where like if it happens once, it'll happen 3 times. One of the things that I do for me in the area where Saturn is for myself to identify how the pattern is working and what I need to pay attention to is I'll go through as I'm noticing things. If I notice it once, all right, it's there. If I notice it twice, I need to pay attention because more than likely there's going to be a 3rd time. And if it's something I don't want to experience again, because sometimes that can happen, then I need to figure out what triggered the orders for both of those to come through. So that's one way that Saturn can be protective for you, is to notice the patterns in your life in the area where Saturn is. Again, Capricorn, Aquarius, so those houses, any placements there. And then also Saturn itself and the ruler of that Saturn sign. So if you're able to identify the patterns that are coming up, and it's not just about, because Saturn has a lot to do with detail too. So it's not just about the patterns, it's also about the details of those patterns. And is there anything different between the patterns? And if you're noticing anything different between the patterns, what actually is working for you and what is not working for you. This is not technically like a creation manifestation course of study, but it can be used for that too. If you're looking at your Saturn placement and you're figuring out the systems and the structures and the hierarchies that actually are bringing benefit to you and offer you the protection that you really need so that you can receive what you're asking for, I revere that. Ask for more. Also, one of the lessons of Saturn is like, we only have so much time. We only have so much time here on the earth. So what are you going to do with it? You have to choose something. You have to choose. Being a Saturn, where that Saturn is in your chart, you have to choose. What are you going to do? How are you going to use that placement? Saturn also, part of the reason that we need to really sit and understand how to protect that Saturn placement is because Saturn offers us an earned position of hierarchy. So where it is in your chart, it's going to be off Capricorn and Aquarius also, not just the Saturn placement, but the Capricorn and Aquarius houses too, which could be the same for you. Saturn could be in one of those signs for you. So that's true. It offers you, it's like a paid position, an earned position of hierarchy. Because if you think about a job for a moment, okay, you have a team full of workers, but then there's a manager over that team. Say that manager is going to leave and go somewhere else, and they're looking to hire in-house someone from that team down here so that they can be then above that team and manage that team. So they're going to be put in a position in a hierarchy above those other people, those other workers. If there's no one who has shown that they've earned that position, they're probably going to look outside for it. You see what I mean with the earn? You have to, out of everyone in that group, of workers, say that you were the one to get everything done, you're putting in the overtime, you're doing everything you need to do, Capricorn, Saturn, Aquarius is going to come through and reward you. And it might not be the position in that specific, say that you get passed up for that position. Well, then maybe that was a Saturn protection via redirection. You realize, oh, really, I've earned more than this, or I've earned something else, or this is another victory, another space, another hierarchy structure where there's more money, or it'll be a different pace, a different place, different people. And so that's another way too that Saturn protects us, is by really putting up barriers. Like, we think we want this one thing. You ever had that happen where like you think you want one thing? I was literally just thinking about this for myself today because of the Capricorn full moon that we're in, all right? Shout out Capricorn, love you Capricorn. You think you want one thing, but no matter what you do, it just doesn't seem to work out for you. No matter what you do, it just doesn't seem to work out. And you keep going for it, and you keep getting blocked, and you keep going for it, and you keep getting blocked, and you keep going for it, and you keep getting blocked. That's Saturn coming in to make sure that you really want that. Do you really want it? Do you really want it? Do you actually really want it? Do you actually really want it? Because I've been through some of those where I have gone through, I've got blocked, I've gotten blocked, I've gotten blocked, I've gotten blocked, and then years like I just kind of give up on it, and I'm like, I don't actually really, let's focus on something else then. This is clearly not working. Let's do something else. So then I'll go and do something else, and then years later I'll look back on that period of my life and be like, I'm so grateful that didn't happen. I can't even imagine what my life would be like had I actually received that thing that I was asking for. So that's another way that Saturn protects you, is like protection by redirection. It's true. Another thing that Saturn will do to protect you is if you have come into, especially for people who have a lot of Capricorn placements and you're like really heavy in your structural systems, just consistency, if you are realizing that what you have asked for, and again, this is more like manifestation creation, but in the process of transformation, this can be protective. If what you have asked for is coming through, but then you realize like, oh, actually, I don't like this detail about what has come through for me. I don't like this detail about what has come through for me, and I don't like this one. Everything else is great. Everything else is something that I'm really grateful for, and I'm really grateful that I'm here with that. But there's these details that I just don't really like. And so Saturn will then offer you, okay, well, if you don't like that, then here, we're going to put you over here then. We're going to make sure that you go through this transformational process that you need. And this is why Saturn and Pluto kind of go together, okay? Because you have to be able to leave one system structure and hierarchy to go into the next if needed and necessary. They'll bring you the next one. You go through one hierarchy, you get placed in your new position, your new hierarchy, your new structure, your new system. And then you realize, oh, actually, this is what I wanted. And I was able to refine because I've been through 3 or 4 different other situations where I realized this wasn't really for me, this wasn't really for me, this wasn't really for me. And this brings me to like the big portion of Saturn protections, is because if you have, the way that I think about it is in a spherical sense, because Saturn rules gravity. And so if you're thinking about the layers if there were layers to a sphere, and kind of like what comes off of that, if what you want is at the center of that sphere, it's at the very center of it. What you want is at the center of that sphere, but you had to go through this big layer out here, and you had to go through this layer, and you had to go through this layer, and you had to go to this one, and 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 then finally, you're like, actually, this is right where I want to be. Beautiful. You've learned how to earn that, not only protection, because now anybody else who would want to come near you also has to go through those different layers, but also you've earned the value, the gravity that's at the center of that. So if you're looking at where Saturn is in your chart, it's very wise to sit and to realize how those different spherical structures of boundaries work for you in that area and how they don't work for you in that area. Sometimes there's going to be boundaries that are actually blocking what you want to come in, and so you're going to have to rework and reorder. And that might be putting in more time, putting in more effort, giving more of yourself to what it is that you're working on or working towards. There could also be barriers that are going to keep you more protected. And one of the things about these different layers of Capricorn is the more detailed that they are, the more protection they're going to offer you. So if you know 5 layers out, if there's, and this is something, okay, I keep tabs on what people say to me because of my specific placements in my chart, but I've also just learned that that's a trigger for where I need my boundaries and protection. So I know that if people talk about certain things or they speak on things, and I can tell that they have certain mindsets, I can recognize, oh, they probably don't need to come into that 4th layer or that 3rd layer or that 2nd layer. And we can have a relationship, but it needs to be at this very detailed, defined layer where there is distance between us. And if it works for the both of us, then it works for the both of us. And if not, well then, leave it be. That's just what it is. The hard-hitting lessons of Saturn usually happen when there is a situation, a circumstance, a person, some sort of experience in your life that has gotten so close and so intimate to you, or what it is that you want. They have somehow gone through these different layers of structure and gotten close to you without you understanding what boundaries they have crossed through to make it to you really in the first place. And the hard-hitting lessons happen when you realize, oh, I need that boundary, and I need that boundary, and I need that boundary, and that one, and that one, and that one, but it's already too late, and they're right there. Those are that's usually the harshness of Saturn, is that we just have not taken the time to sit and identify the layers that we actually need for our protection. What do we really need? What do we really, really need for that protection? What are the systems that keep us protected? What are the hierarchies that keep us protected? Where is our place within those hierarchies? And how does that keep us protected? Also, it's the systems that we don't have control over. That's part of Saturn, is not having control, just being able to be in the energy that we're in. We do have control and we don't have control. That's a part of hierarchy. Like, we have control at the level that we're at, but there's usually always going to be another being or system that is above us somehow. So being aware of that too is a lot. It is a lot. Saturn is not an easy planet to work with, but the rewards I've found, if you're willing to do the work and you're willing to sit and study and you're willing to humble yourself and you're willing to learn and you're willing to correct yourself and you're willing to take responsibility, because we can't avoid responsibility. So if you're willing to do that and really sit in the earth of it, then there can be the rewards from the structure and the system and the hierarchy that are happening. So the reason that you would need to protect that Saturn placement is because more than likely you're being forced onto the path to earn that position of power. And because you're being forced on the path, you're probably sacrificing for it. And if you're sacrificing for it, it becomes worth something to you. And so learning how to protect it is something that Saturn needs you to do. And if you do that, Saturn will then protect you. So you earn the protections of Saturn too. That's true. I love Saturn. I really do. Saturn is a kicker. And sometimes a tricker. That's true. It can be a little tricky. That's just what it is. But that's it. That's the Saturn video. It's definitely something to keep consistency in. If you're going to study it, keep consistency in it. It is. It is. And thanks for being here. I give my gratitude, love, and reverence to you. May everything you need to receive in your Saturn lessons come through easily and in love, true. That's true. And I give my gratitude, love, and reverence to the indigenous spirits of this land where I sit, talk, walk, and stand, and where you are. That is true, and I give my love, gratitude, and reverence to you. Thank you for coming through and for receiving this information, and I will see you next time.